listening to The Foundation of Wellness, a refreshing take on diet and lifestyle. Join me, Marisa Moon, as we tackle modern health with innovative and ancient principles. I'm a certified primal health coach and intermittent fasting instructor at marisamoon.com. Hey out there, it's me, Marisa, your host. I'm happy to be here today talking to you. It's actually a really stressful time for most of us right now. It's March 17th, 2020 when I'm recording this introduction, and the coronavirus outbreak is becoming a very real and scary thing, even for us in the United States at this time. And my husband, Eric, is an ER physician, so he's working in the emergency room where he is going to be the first line of defense for people suffering from the effects of this virus. And of course, that's scary for me because no matter what precautions he takes, it's likely he'll be exposed to the virus very soon and bring that home. So I am one of the first people practicing isolated lifestyle. I'm trying my best to stay away from people in public and just stock up and stay home. And it's not the easiest thing, and it also increases my stress and anxiety because I'm very aware of the concerns that are affecting us at this time. And as much as I am the first person to want to keep her head in the sand, I this time can't escape the very real situation that's around us and affecting me on a very personal level. And all of this stress can be really hard on the body. So things that you thought you had under control can all of a sudden start screaming at you again, like chronic health conditions, chronic pain, and things that you've been dealing with that maybe have been amended, but at this time they're trouble again, like hormonal issues and your mood and emotional stability. And it really works with our episode today because the thyroid is so directly connected with our adrenal system, which takes a huge hit from chronic stress and anxiety. And it's such an important part of considering your thyroid health that functional medicine practitioner Chris Kresser has written an entire series and special report on thyroid disorders, with one of the articles being named 5 Ways That Stress Causes Hypothyroidism. And I will link to the specific article that I just mentioned in the show notes under the resources section, but you can also see the entire thyroid special report at chriskresser.com/thyroid. I'll include both of those links in the show note. So in the special report, Chris explains how blood sugar imbalances and poor gut health can lead to hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. The harmful effects of stress on your adrenal glands completes the triad, he says. So today, on this episode, we're talking about a lot of these points, especially nutrition and gut health to support the thyroid. This is part 2 of 2 episodes on the thyroid. There are some pretty essential dietary and lifestyle changes that you'd be wise to implement if your thyroid isn't functioning properly. And that's why Dr. Jeni Weis is back to talk to us about her favorite dietary protocols and lifestyle changes that she takes her patients through while they're dealing with thyroid disorders and trying to heal from that dysfunction. She also explains quite a bit about leaky gut syndrome on both episodes because it's so important when you're talking about functional medicine and autoimmune dysfunction. In part 1, last week's episode, number 77, Dr. Jeni Weis explained what the thyroid is and why we need it to be healthy. And she gets into various thyroid disorders and why so many people are walking around undiagnosed, even though they've been tested for their thyroid function at their doctor. She explained which tests you should be ordering to confirm or dismiss your suspicions of thyroid dysfunction. So be sure to listen to episode 77 if you haven't already and share this information with someone who needs it. Here's a bit about today's expert, Dr. Jeni Weis. At the age of 23, Jeni was diagnosed with cervical cancer. She turned to alternative treatments for answers, and after just a few weeks of cleaning up her diet and incorporating nutritious foods, herbs, and supplements, Jeni received the amazing news that her test results showed no more signs of cervical cancer. This experience led Jeni to pursue a career in naturopathy, or holistic and alternative-based medicine. She obtained her master's degree in pain management, and she's a reflexologist certified. She soon graduated from New Eden School of Natural Health in 2019 with her doctorate in traditional naturopathy. In her clinical training, Jeni was treating mostly patients with cancer and thyroid disorders, which fostered her newfound passion and her dissertation topic on holistic nutrition for Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Jeni is board certified by the American Association of Alternative Medicine, and she's the wellness director of Good Success in Northwest Indiana. Dr. Jeni Weis has a rapidly growing Facebook group called Holistic Health Circle, a naturopathic doctor's perspective, and she operates a virtual practice and sees patients nationwide. It's a pleasure to have her back on the show for part 2 of thyroid disorders, and you can always find her at drjeniweiss.com. Here we go. Here we are. We're back with Dr. Jeni. I'm so happy to have her here again because we're doing part 2 of the thyroid episode in a holistic way. We want to know what we can learn from Dr. Jeni. And today we're going to be talking about some nutrition stuff because I know that's your favorite thing.
Woo-woo!
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you again and welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me again. I'm really excited about the second part here. So we can definitely dive right in.
This is your jam. Well, how about we just get into all that stuff after you first tell us some of the reasons that you think the thyroid disorders are becoming so common today?
Sure. So in the last episode, we talked about how there's a lot of sort of root causes. And, we are at a point right now in America where we have access to all these different foods or foods that we think are foods, and we're eating them, and our intestinal lining is so fragile. And if there's things entering into our digestive system that maybe we really shouldn't be eating, what will happen is there's actually going to be tiny holes punched into our small intestine, and that's known as leaky gut. And that happens when undigested food particles, parasites, pathogenic bacteria, even toxins, which are the waste products from our good bacteria and bad bacteria in our gut, leak out into the bloodstream. So there's this sort of exchange, this literal leaking. And if you think of a faucet dripping, that's kind of the effect. So leaky gut is definitely a huge cause. Nutrient deficiencies are other ones, deficiencies of certain vitamins and minerals, things like iodine, zinc, vitamin C, are huge. Vitamin D, specifically D3, cholecalciferol. If we don't have the right nutrients in our bodies, like zinc goes towards making and manufacturing of thyroid hormone. So if we don't have enough zinc, how could it be made? So having the right nutrition is super, super important. Gluten is scientifically linked to leaky gut, and there's a pun for you. And so many health issues that come with thyroid disease. Also, exposure to certain viruses like mononucleosis, Epstein-Barr, also called herpes virus 4. That is a huge contributor to thyroid disease. Even what we're exposed to in the sense of, toxins and chemicals like toxic sprays for pesticides. Oftentimes, thyroid disease is very high in farming communities where crop dusters are used. Those are the planes that fly down low over the crops and spray them with, the pharmaceutical grade, pesticides and herbicides, things like that. Autoimmune disease is another one. If we have one immune disease, that kind of opens the doorway for others to creep in because our immune system is already so low, it's suppressed. So other diseases will come in and they'll work in tandem. Hypothyroidism is caused by Hashimoto's, and hyperthyroidism is caused by Graves'. And there's a lot of different, sort of root causes of that. Even cross-reactive proteins, things that are not necessarily don't have gluten in them, but have glutenoid compounds. So things that act very similar to gluten in our body. So corn does not have gluten. It's gluten-free. Someone with celiac disease can eat corn and not die from it. But corn has something called prolamin. And prolamin is a glutenoid compound that does basically the same thing in our body, contributes to leaky gut. Oats have avenine. That's its version, so to speak, of gluten. So really what we're putting in our bodies, what we're exposed to, on a daily basis, even, makeup we use, what we wash our hair with, what we use for underarm deodorant, if there's immune system disruptors in all those products, and the average woman uses 20 products a day. And that sounds like a lot, but you think, you use toothpaste, mouthwash, some people use 10 different kinds of makeup on their face at once. Nothing wrong with that, but that all adds up. If it's got immune system disruptors, things in your hair, what you wash your body with, even what you wash your clothes with and what you wash your hands with. And if those all add up to, it becomes a toxic load. So really what we're exposed to on a daily basis contributes to thyroid disease. And that could be anything from a chemical, a virus, or food, and there's more things, of course, but those are the basic ones.
Wow. And I've learned here and there throughout my nutrition interests that goitrogens can also be a problem. I don't even know what they are. Are they plant proteins? And how is that a problem for the thyroid?
So goitrogens are found in very specific plants, things in the cruciferous family, like kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, things that are like sort of deep leafy greens. Now, the misnomer is that if we eat kale, we'll get thyroid disease. That's not necessarily true because kale is a superfood with a very high ORAC value, that's antioxidant content. There is things in kale, phytochemicals, enzymes, vitamins, and minerals. It's such a superfood. Do you know one serving of kale is 1,000 times as nutritionally dense as one serving of oatmeal? 1,000 times the ORAC value. That's crazy. So that does a lot of good in our bodies. But if we do eat a lot of goitrogens and we're already, at risk for immune disease, we've already had Epstein-Barr, we have a genetic proclivity for, getting thyroid disease, and we're eating the wrong foods, then it's just sort of, adding to everything else that's going on. But having a kale smoothie, in the morning isn't going to cause thyroid disease. But if someone has thyroid disease already and, is going through a lot of the other issues that we've discussed, they might want to avoid things in the brassica family. So brassica are Brussels sprouts, kale, kohlrabi, I believe even asparagus. I don't know every single one. Broccoli.
There's so many in that family, so that is a shame. But I like hearing that it's not necessarily that you'd have to cut that out or it would be bad for you. It just depends on where you're at in your healing or your stage. Yeah. Okay.
And it's between you and your practitioner. Some practitioners might think it'd be best to cut those out if your disease has really progressed. Some might say, hey, you're in the very beginning stages. You need that kale for the high nutrient content, and put them on a wellness protocol of eliminating gluten and cross-reactive proteins, and they're eating, wild-caught fish and organic free-range meats and plenty of raw fruits and vegetables. Then that kale is just going to help everything else, and boost your overall nutrition.
There's the autoimmune protocol, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and there's a lot of people who actually started that have Hashimoto's disease. So I'm surprised that goitrogens have never been on the autoimmune protocol no list, and so they're not necessarily saying those are the ones that are the worst, to contribute. So I don't know. I guess I hear things different about it all the time, and I find it confusing, even though I'm in this kind of arena. So is that something you really don't worry about until what? Until they've tried everything else and nothing seems to be helping?
I mean, like I said, if someone's disease is super progressed, then it might not be a good idea to go and eat, a casserole's worth of Brussels sprouts or kale salad. But I have had a lot of patient success stories where they're no longer clinical hypothyroid anymore, and they have kale every day. And, they'll eat Brussels sprouts, they'll have broccoli. And it really is allopathic medicine is more cookie cutter. If you come in with, an infection, you're going to get the same Z-Pack as the person before you. Whereas natural medicine is more, it's so customized to that person. There's different root causes of Hashimoto's. There's different mediators. There's different genetics that people have. There's different triggers that push forward, those genetics to the forefront. Like there could be, for example, there's two sisters that I'm seeing. They both have Hashimoto's, but they have different symptoms. So without genetic testing, there's no way to know. But they've told me of cousins and aunts that all have Hashimoto's too. So there probably is a hereditary tie to that. But just because you have the genes for something doesn't mean you're going to get it. If you're living a healthy lifestyle and, putting the good stuff in and keeping the bad stuff out, you probably won't get it. Or if you do, your body will handle it, a little bit better.
Okay. And when someone starts working on nutrition with you, they already know that they have dysfunction in their thyroid. Where are some of the places that you start?
The very first thing I do is have all new patients keep nutrition journals for 2 weeks. And I use IFM's nutrition journals because I love them. And that really helps me to see what's going on, not in just one day, but for 2 weeks, which that's a really good average of how someone eats, on the regular. Maybe 1 week you might go to some parties and eat poorly, or 1 week you start some health challenge and you eat really well. It's kind of the average of seeing, okay, how is this person living their life? Let me take a peek in, kind of like a detective with a magnifying glass, and see, hey, what's going into their body. So, and I tell patients this: document everything. If they eat one M&M, make sure they write that down in there. If they're having one bite of their son's chicken nugget, every other day, write that down. Don't just write your, quote unquote 3 square meals, or if they're doing IF, don't just write that. And then if you have a snack later, skip that. Write every single thing that goes into your body and how much water you're drinking, other drinks with and without calories. And that helps me to see what's going on. And then you can correlate, symptom flare-ups with, oh, you ate a gluten pizza, this day, and you had cereal with milk for breakfast, and you had toast, and then for lunch you had a sandwich, and for dinner that pizza, and today was the worst day and you felt like total brain fog. Let's see what removing gluten would do for you. And I know we talked about leaky gut a little bit earlier, but a lot of patients have intestinal permeability, and that is something that I would love to talk about. Just basically in a nutshell, the lining of our intestine, of our small intestine, it's called the lumen. That's our intestinal wall. And attached to that lining are small finger-like projections called villi, villi. This increases the surface area for absorption by 30-fold. On top of the villi are even smaller finger-like projections called microvilli. This increases the surface area by 600-fold. When we eat foods we're not supposed to, namely gluten, sugar, dairy, even artificial things like, dyes and MSG, it causes the microvilli at the very top to become inflamed, and they'll eventually die. So then is left the villi underneath, and then those will die. And then there's the enterocyte underneath, which is the cell that makes up the cell wall of the lumen, and that will just collapse and die. And there's a hole there, right there, where those villi and microvilli used to absorb nutrients. There's a hole leading to the capillaries instead of the nutrients passing through the enterocyte, the cell. So there's this leaking, an exchange of the undigested food particles and, pathogenic bacteria. And that leaking really causes, a lot of the issues related to Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So if that patient in their food journals is eating things that causes them to have leaky gut, or, as us doctors call intestinal permeability, because leaky gut sounds disgusting, right? But it really, it is. And, it's eliminating then those foods that are harming that patient and giving them a protocol, of elimination. And then
which foods might those be?
Gluten for sure. Gluten for sure. Highly inflammatory. Gluten has been scientifically proven so gluten's a protein. It's made up of 2 different proteins. And it's the perfect size to punch a hole in your intestines. And that's what it does. It creates holes. Even if someone isn't allergic to celiac or isn't allergic to gluten and they have celiac disease, there is 2 different kinds of food allergies, there's IgE mediated, whereas, someone with celiac disease might have that. They might go into anaphylaxis if you have gluten, breakout in hives. And then there's the IgG, which is more long-term, that pretty much everyone in the world has. And that causes irritable bowel disease, digestive issues, that symptoms can appear days, weeks, years after eating gluten, as opposed to the immediate need of, you got to take an antihistamine, the histamine reaction. So, that is huge. Sugar is really inflammatory to our gut lining. Sugar is another big one. All kinds of sugar except for raw fruit sugar. Fruit sugar is very different from processed sugar that has been bleached white with animal bones, that is chemically nothing like the original sugarcane plant, that grows. It's a reed that grows. And there's different grades too. Things like raw organic honey is far different from white processed sugar. There's sort of like a gradation effect. Now, if someone has really severe Hashimoto's, though, I would recommend no sugar except sugar that comes from fruit until their body's sort of healed and sealed. Sealed meaning the leakiness of the gut. Another food is really anything that's an additive, anything artificial. So FD&C red number 40, if you see it says colors on the foods that you're eating, yellow number 11, blue lake number 5, the best place for that food is on the shelf because it's got artificial stuff in it. I made a video for Holistic Health Circle and I saw these vegan jerky strips and I was like, this is a good opportunity for a teaching moment. So I read the ingredients. There's hydrolyzed crap in there. There's wheat, gluten, sugar. And it was just like, I hate to say it this way, but it was a cancer factory in a package. So I made a video, for my 1,300 followers just to educate them to say, hey, you have this choice not to eat this stuff. And just because something is vegan does not mean it's good for you. There's health foods that are not vegan, like salmon, that are great for you. Now, there's a lot of vegan foods that are good for you, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. We should be eating heavily plant-based, but meat is important in our diet. It's important to eat things like wild-caught fish and free-range, grass-fed beef, because then you're getting the nutrients that animal ate when it was alive. You're getting and it's an accumulative effect. So if we eat unorganic meats, you're getting the antibiotics that were fed to that animal and whatever crap that it ate, in its life. So, it's eliminating the foods, things like sugar, gluten, dairy, artificial dyes, MSG, colorants, things like that, and upping the intake because usually, these patients aren't eating enough of raw fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some cage-free organic pastured eggs are a great choice, are such a good choice, especially for people with hypothyroid. There's vitamin D in the egg yolks, there's albumin, all the essential amino acids. Eggs are a superfood. So, really eliminating those big scary four, the sugar, gluten, dairy, and the artificial stuff.
Do you have any feelings on the use of like vegetable oils and like industrial seed oils?
That is a great question. I do have feelings. I'm glad you asked. So a lot of those vegetable oils, first of all, they're hydrogenated, which is just so horrible for our bodies because it can lead to heart disease, diabetes, clogged arteries, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Cancer, yeah, the big scary C word. Those oils are heated to a point where molecularly they're not themselves anymore. So actually an example is extra virgin olive oil. I was at a patient's house recently in Dallas and, we were going through her pantry and, throwing away certain things and keeping others. And she's like, I have this organic, cold pressed, extra virgin olive oil, and it's what I cook all my food in. And I said, I'm glad that you have it. You can keep it, just don't heat it. And it's best to be drizzled on food afterwards. What happens is when you heat extra virgin olive oil and most oils above 200 degrees, which is pretty low, their molecular structure changes and they become carcinogenous, cancer causing. It also agitates thyroid, is a mediator for Hashimoto's. Hydrogenated oils like peanut oil, vegetable oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, all those oils, when they're hydrogenated and when they're heated to a certain point, they change. And then that causes our body to change. Now, cold oils are great.
So what if it's corn oil, cold pressed canola oil, cold pressed soybean oil? I don't know if they all exist, but what if the bottle says that?
Those are great. I'm so glad you asked that too. Soybean oil is definitely a no-no because soybeans can actually bind to our estrogen receptors in our bodies and change our levels of estrogen. And you're trying to balance your hormones if you have a thyroid disorder, right? Now the thyroid doesn't produce estrogen, but the thyroid is connected to so many things, including the menstrual cycle. So if you're eating tons of soy or soybean oil, that can really affect your menstrual cycle, in a not positive way. You mentioned canola oil. Almost all canola oil is GMO, and it was a hybridization plant that was man-made, created in order to have a high yield. And canola oil is one of the worst things you can put in your body. It is not a health food. It's in unfortunately, a lot of like hummuses, packaged dips, things like that, breads, things in more the middle of the grocery store instead of, the perimeter, things like the meats and fruits and vegetables. You mentioned also corn oil. So corn is inflammatory also, in our diets. And a lot of people have difficulty with it that have thyroid disorders. So oils in general, especially soybean oil, but anything that's hydrogenated, corn oil, it's like drinking liquid fat. It'll stick right into your arteries. It will mediate your Hashimoto's, your hypo and hyperthyroid. It contributes to heart disease, and the best place for those oils are on the shelf, not purchased. Now, there's a couple exceptions. Cold pressed extra virgin olive oil is great. Cold, it's actually a really healthy thing to eat. You can drizzle it on vegetables that you've cooked. You can use it in a salad, just as long as you don't heat it above 115 degrees. Cold pressed coconut oil and specifically avocado oil, those two oils you can use for cooking. If you're going to cook in an oil, cook in coconut oil because its smoke point, I think it's at around 500 degrees. So it won't change molecularly, and it won't then cause your body to change. Because if a food changes in some way and the molecules rearrange, it can cause your cells to genetically mutate. And that's what cancer cells are, genetic mutations. So I recommend avoiding, oils that are heated, except with the two exceptions of number one, coconut oil, and number two, a close second, avocado oil. Those are fine to cook in. I would not personally cook in any other oils except for those two. And those are really the only oils I have cold pressed along with extra virgin olive oil. You can have walnut oil cold pressed, also hemp seed oil, cold pressed pumpkin seed oil.
I was just saying, don't heat them, or can you?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, bingo, eat them, but don't heat them.
Right. Oh, that's great. Eat them, don't heat them. I like that. I'm going to use that with my patients. I love that.
Oh, good. And the coconut oil and the avocado oil, what are your feelings on the refined versions? The ones that are really pourable or won't, solidify?
You asked the best questions. And so I think, am I giving, enough information or too much? And you asked the great follow-up question. So yes, refined coconut oil is not the best to cook in. So when an oil is refined, it's heated to a high point to remove quote unquote impurities. The issue is those impurities are actually good for us. They're healthy for us. And it's like when you heat and filter out honey, you're filtering out the raw enzymes, you're filtering out the propolis and bee pollen and royal jelly and all those things that make it a superfood. And it turns into, a sugar factory that really can cause inflammation. So I would recommend the best place for refined coconut oil is on the shelf next to all the other hydrogenated oils. Cold pressed coconut oil is great. And a lot of patients will say, but there's saturated fat in it. Well, there's different types of fats. And just like there's different types of fats, there's different types of saturated fats. So there's saturated fat, like eating the saturated, like fat rind of beef is very different from having, and coconut oil is about 14 grams a serving of saturated fat. And it's a type of fat that can actually bind to the bad fat, air quotes, in our arteries and flush it out of our system. It's great for our liver. It has medium chain triglycerides. There's a lot of great things in coconut oil that when you refine it, it loses those beneficial qualities. So the best coconut oil is organic, cold pressed, meaning it has not been heated. If you can get coconut oil that's organic and cold pressed, even if you heat it, it'll still retain a lot of beneficial qualities, but it's great to have raw too.
Okay, that's awesome. I learned so much. And I want to know, when it's refined, I know you probably have a million things to teach us after the oil thing, but I think it's a confusing topic for everyone. So now we're learning about what's the best. But when it's refined, is it as bad as vegetable oils or seed oils? Is it bad, like dangerous, or is it just not as healthy?
I would say personally, it's not as healthy. Any oil that goes through a refining process is not good to put, in your body. I'm personally not a fan of dairy just because of the overwhelming evidence that I've read, in my studies, that it causes cancer, that it contributes to bone loss. It's a mediator for Hashimoto's. So it is, though, however, far better to eat grass-fed raw butter than ghee, which is refined, clarified, a much unhealthier version. So anything that's refined has been heated down, it loses its nutritional properties. And it's sort of like if you think of a concentrated juice, like a fruit juice, it is far better to eat an apple raw in its natural state with all its enzymes intact and everything like that, than boiled down concentrated apple juice in those frozen, boxes in the freezer section. One's a health food. The other doesn't necessarily cause disease. I mean, if you're piling it on top of everything else, it's not great for you. So I would not recommend having refined coconut oil at all. It's so easy to find cold pressed. Costco has it, Jewel, Mariano's, Whole Foods. You can order it on Amazon, have it shipped.
You may have heard this, maybe you haven't, but the reason I'm asking you these questions is because a lot of people struggle with two things: the coconut flavor and the fact that it's hard. They want something that's pourable. So I have clients, family members that just insist on buying these refined versions because, I can cook with it over 500 degrees, or because it's easy to cook with, or because my husband doesn't get mad it tastes like coconut. So there's lots of reasons why people really want to know, but is it that bad? That's very helpful of you to explain to us, because if you're in the healing process, if you're going through finally recovering from your thyroid disorder, then you're going to want to do everything that is the best you can, at least for a certain period of time. So you've talked to us about gluten, you've talked to us a little bit about dairy, and we've covered sugar, food additives, and oils. Is there anything else that should be removed while we're in this healing process?
Sure. Talking about meat is part of the recovery process for thyroid. I believe meat is very beneficial. I am heavily plant-based. I eat very little meat, but I eat meat, and I'll never remove it from my diet because I know how beneficial it is and how that protein is so easy for our bodies to assimilate. So the meat that we eat, it should be, as much as possible, as much as you can afford, to get organic. Organic is super important because organic means it hasn't been raised with the pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides of non-organic meat. So whatever that animal is fed, like if it's a chicken that's fed corn that's GMO, that corn is spread with herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, and then the corn is inflammatory in itself, and then it's fed to the chicken, and then the chicken's pumped full of antibiotics and all this other crap. And then that goes into our bodies. We're getting this accumulation of the stuff that the chicken ate and the stuff that the chicken ate that was sprayed with things that we shouldn't be eating, that cause cancer and Hashimoto's. DDT was a pesticide widely used in the 70s and 80s, and it causes the shells of bald eagles' eggs to thin. And these eggs would break then when the parent eagles would sit on them. They cause cancer, and these chemicals, in adult birds. And a lot of the chemicals still used and sprayed today, it might not be DDT, but it is very bad for us. Cancer causing, immune system disruptors, hormone imbalancers. So they cause our body to go into a state of, oh my gosh, what's happening? So the best thing to do is, if you're going to have meat, have it organic. Make sure your beef is grass fed, meaning it's eating what it's supposed to eat. bison meat, cow meat. You can go in on someone and purchase a quarter of a cow, a half of a cow. That's a great option. And make sure that that is grass fed, because all the nutrients from the grass and even little tiny bugs that live in the grass, those all go into the cow. And then you're getting like this superfood that's eating what it's supposed to eating. You don't have to worry about cows eating corn that's inflammatory, like we talked about, cows that are pumped full of bovine growth hormone, RBST, cows that are genetically bred to have all this meat on them. And if you look at pictures online of genetically modified cows, it makes me want to cry. I feel bad for that animal. And then we're eating their genetically modified meat. We're eating the corn that they ate. We're eating the antibiotics, and we're eating their unnatural diet. So it's best to have meat that is organic and free range. And if it's fish, now it's true organic fish doesn't really exist. Wild caught is what you want to have if you have fish, because farm raised fish, same thing. There's a huge amount of fish in a very tiny space. They're swimming in their eliminations. And I wrote an ebook, and it's called Beige Foods to Avoid, and I have a picture on there of fish next to fish that are just like an inch apart. So they're swimming in their own feces. They're eating antibiotics and artificial dyes fed to them by people to get them to not die. And then if a bunch of fish die in that group, they're left in there to kind of rot. So if you look at a side by side of farm raised salmon to a wild caught salmon, that wild caught salmon has less fat. It's this beautiful, brilliant pink color. It's not this like really, really pale orange. And it's because it's got carotenoids, it's got antioxidants, and it's good for you. It's got the omegas. Whereas the other one, the farm raised will raise your cholesterol, disrupt your hormones, so another thing you can add to the list is, meats that are not organic and fish that are not wild caught, eggs that are not cage free, things like that.
Oh, great tips. So many here. That's awesome. And we have to wrap up soon, but what are some of the lifestyle interventions that you start to suggest when someone's healing from thyroid dysfunction?
That is another great question. Keeping a schedule is one of the big things that I talk to my patients about. If you're waking up some days at 5 a.m. and some days sleeping in until 10, which can happen to a lot of these patients just because they're so tired, your body will never get into a set rhythm. So ideally, and in a perfect world, it's not going to always happen, but we want to try to wake up at the same time, go to bed, relatively the same time, eat at relatively the same time each day. If you're doing intermittent fasting, and if your window is noon to 4, or if your window is 10 to 6, or whatever you choose it to be, try and always eat within that window. If someone chooses not to do intermittent fasting and they're a breakfast, lunch, and dinner person, if you eat breakfast one day at 5 a.m. and one day at 10 a.m., your body's going to be so confused, and it's going to always be digesting, and all the energy is going to be taken away from healing. So I recommend it eating at the same times in general, every day within as much time frame as you're able to. Getting a good amount of sleep, getting at least 7 hours a night is really beneficial to the underlying issues, that contribute to Hashimoto's and thyroid disease and things like that. And it could be as simple as, choosing to watch one less hour of TV a day, choosing to not scroll through Facebook for that hour. The average person gets several hours of media every single day. And if you're willing to, air quotes again, sacrifice that for sleep, that's going to really help your health long term. And it's up to that person. How bad do they want to get better? If they're just beginning these symptoms, they're not sure, or they bounce from doctor to doctor, maybe they're willing to make a few lifestyle changes. If it's someone that's experienced it for decades and they're at their wit's end, they're all in. I have a patient like that right now. She's like, Dr. Jeni, I am all in. And I was like, okay, I joke that I love telling people what to do, but I really love seeing people recover and get better that have been living in illness. So another thing is not washing your clothes in detergents that are full of chemicals.
Wow.
Using natural and organic makeup and hair care products that don't have hormone disruptors in them. Using even feminine care products that have not been bleached, because bleach, you're putting that into you, and then that disrupts your hormones, and that's where your hormones are, right? So things like that. And even making sure that you do something for yourself each day. for 15 minutes. Go for a walk with your spouse, play with your kids, color in an adult coloring book, to play an instrument, do something that is mentally stimulating. Listen to some music or anything that you like. It can be literally anything, whatever works for you. There's no one formula. Whatever you enjoy, that you get joy out of, enjoy, participate in that, because that really helps, and that releases endorphins, the happy hormones in our brain, and that helps to combat a lot of the things and sadness and frustration that goes along with that. There's a lot of things we can do, from keeping the same schedule. Using essential oils in a diffuser is great. There's essential oils that are relaxing, to our minds. Things like lavender is great. Eucalyptus, orange helps to boost our happiness. It's been proven. So you can put some orange essential oil in your diffuser at night. Make sure it's within 3 feet of where your head is resting. And speaking of that too, make sure you have good quality bedding, good quality bed sheets. You spend about a third of your life in bed, so that's an investment. Make sure you have a nice ergonomic pillow. Some people will sleep in 2 pillows and that'll leave their head forward like this. Yeah. It should be 1 pillow, and it should be, invest $50, $60 in it, because you're going to be spending thousands of hours of your life in bed. And why sleep on something that's so uncomfortable that makes it hard to sleep? Invest in yourself. That's really important. Even if there's, one of the things we talk about the farther I get along with patients, and once, they get to know me and I get to know them, talking about toxic relationships in their life. If there's a person that is really negging you down, unsupportive, makes fun of you for your food choices. Oh, come on, have this cheese. Don't be ridiculous. You don't need that. And you don't need that in your own recovery. So, to let those people know that, you're on this health journey, and it would be great if they can support you. And then if they don't, it's up to them to make that choice what to do at that moment. I can never tell people, hey, cut that person out of your life. But oftentimes if they see it's an abusive relationship, they'll end up doing that. I've done that in my own life, and I've only benefited from it. You are the sum of the people you surround yourself with. So making as many good choices as possible, whether it's what you eat, what you drink. Are you drinking pops and, like 5 cups of coffee a day? Or are you drinking, water, alkaline water, fresh pressed juice, and herbal teas? There's like night and day there. What you're using in your hair, on your face, under your arms, what you wash your clothes in. There's a lot of choices that we make in a day. And it's just helping to educate them on the different choices, that they have, and then, implementing those, that knowledge. And my husband taught me that wisdom is knowledge applied. So if you're, given good information, to help someone, the best thing you can do is apply that. And then you just see your health take off in this other direction, and pounds shed and hair grow back. And a lot of patients, I can never remove someone from a medication. That's between them and their physician only. But if they're clinically not hypothyroid anymore, they can choose. It's up to them, to ask their physician to lower their dose or completely, remove them from it. And that happens in cases too. So it's just about all those choices that add up. And if someone really wants to see a turnaround in their health, making as many of those good choices as possible.
Yeah, and it's a lifelong journey. I mean, you learn like what your threshold is for certain lifestyle factors or dietary factors. And you're like, well, I pushed it too much with the gluten, or I, pushed it too much with my sleep schedule. So you learn this as you go. It really is a lifelong journey. And Jeni didn't even crack the surface on the things that she shares inside her Facebook group. It's called Holistic Health Circle. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Plenty of advice there for you, and you can ask her all sorts of questions. I just want to highlight quickly that something we've never covered on this show, and we will again in the future. Jeni mentioned eliminating those synthetic fragrances from your cleaning products, like your detergent and the software, what do you call it? Softener sheets?
Softeners, yes.
Yeah, because I'll even spend the night at a family member's house or a friend's house, and it gives me an immediate headache now because I've removed those synthetic fragrances from my life in my house. Now I'm so sensitive to them. It is kind of a consequence, but it's a wake-up call. Like, we don't even know how much it's bombarding our system and our endocrine system, importantly. Mm-hmm. And so if you can start getting more natural, buy the ones at least without the added fragrances, and your pillows and your, not pillows, your candles, all of those things. Absolutely. Great tips there. And I'm sure she knows way more about that. So you should hop in her group. And one question, do you have that ebook available to the public, the one that you wrote?
So I wrote it and distributed it to a few of my friends last year, and it's just 30 pages. It's called Beige Foods to Avoid. I'm reworking it right now. I'll send you a copy so you can look over it, but I'm going to be selling it on Amazon. And then I'm writing another book right now called Foods That Are Not Foods.
Oh, cool.
It's a kind of funny sounding title, but it was inspired because I was in Dallas recently teaching a seminar to a group that had business professionals, but also other doctors. And I wrote an article called Foods That Are Not Foods. And there's certain things that we eat in our diet that we think are foods, and they're part of the food pyramid, and they're at the grocery store, and our mothers fed them to us. But does our body actually see them as food? And so we talk about the definition of food in there, the definition of nutrition, and then it lists these foods that aren't foods. So that's going to be coming out. I don't know exactly when. I do wear a lot of hats, and I love my job so much. And, working on my own schedule is a little bit, it's kind of what I'm working on right now. But I'll send you a copy so you can look over it. And in the future, it will be on sale at Amazon.
Thank you so much. Well, Dr. Weis, it was so great having you. You are really just a plethora of information and such a valuable resource. I think for anyone in the United States, you also take patients online virtually as well. So connect with Dr. Jeni. I'll include her links in the show notes and episode description. And thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, Marisa.
You're welcome.
And the work you do.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you go. You've learned so much in these last 2 episodes. Be sure to share this show with someone who needs this information. And you can always find me on Instagram at Marisa_Moon_. That's where I spend a lot of my time, as well as in my Facebook group, The Foundation of Wellness. And that's at facebook.com/groups/FOW podcast. I try my best to give you guys the most information I can with the time that I have. And soon I'm going to be sharing with you the nutrition and supplement guidelines I've learned based on what we know about the coronavirus at this time. I have downloaded the guide from Chris Masterjohn, and he is someone who I greatly trust when it comes to nutrition and biochemistry and the needs that we have on a cellular level. And I think this guide is going to be quite valuable in helping us to learn the ways we can protect ourselves and our family with nutrition and supplements. So be sure that you are taking care of some of the basics, monitoring your stress levels and finding balance there. I just shared a very personal post on my Instagram and in my Facebook group that shows you all the things that I do to practice stress relief and balance during this time that we have to stay home so often. So I hope you get some ideas from that, and be sure you're getting enough sleep. That is so fundamentally important. Your immune system really depends on you sleeping. That is the time when it's fighting pathogens and things in your system, repairing and making you stronger. So please do not cut out the sleep during these tough times. You really need it, and begin practicing things that make you feel balanced, including your diet. It's easy to just start binging and falling into old habits if we're off work or staying home more often. But I really emphasize sticking to your values and the things that create a healthy, strong immune system and body, because that is going to help you become one of the people who are the least affected by this virus when it does hit. So I'm wishing everyone safety, peace, happiness, and tranquility, and have an awesome day. Bye.